United States Federal Reserve is expected to keep its key short-term interest rate unchanged tomorrow, despite pressure from Trump for the Federal Reserve FOMC, that's the Federal Open Market Committee, to reduce borrowing costs. Both the President and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent want rates to be cut, and our deep dive will look at how the Federal Reserve is likely to juggle the issues. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also yesterday, in prepared remarks to the Milken Institute Global Conference in Los Angeles, said a combination of US tariffs, tax cuts, and the deregulation agenda would work together to drive long-term investment to the United States economy, adding that US financial markets can weather the short-term turbulence. On the US economy, he said growth can get back to 3% by this time next year, adding that the administration was very close to some deals on trade, maybe as early as this week. He reiterated his confidence that 17 trading partners, excluding China, have presented very good trade proposals. On China, he saw substantial progress on trade in the coming weeks. Hello and welcome to Global Business Insights, where we look closer at headlines moving markets to equip viewers with perspectives that will help them thrive in today's rather peculiar business environment. The S&P 500 fell, ending a 9-day rally as investors monitored the latest developments on global trade. Major indexes, however, reduced their losses after data from the Institute for Supply Management reflected stronger than expected service sector activity in April. Sentiment also improved after reports that India has proposed zero tariffs on steel, auto components, and pharmaceuticals on a reciprocal basis and up to a certain amount of imports. On data, US Services PMI released by the Institute for Supply Management ISM showed an improvement in April. The ISM Services PMI expanded by 51.6, up from 50.8, exceeding estimates of 50.6. A subcomponent of the PMI, however, suggested a reacceleration of inflation as prices paid by companies, however, rose to their highest level since February 2023, jumping to 65.1 from 60.9 print. The European Union and France yesterday announced €500 million worth of incentives to lure scientists to the continent. The EU are seeking to profit from US federal funding cuts and clashes with top US universities. French President Emmanuel Macron called on researchers worldwide at Paris's Sorbonne University, alongside European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, to unite and join the EU. Shares of US media companies like Netflix and Walt Disney fell after Trump took aim at the movie industry, saying he will impose a 100% import tax on movies produced abroad. A White House spokesman later said no final decisions on foreign film tariffs have been made, but the administration is exploring all options to deliver on the directive to safeguard national and economic security while helping the domestic film production industry. Trump also said that he wants to help Hollywood studios and will ask if they are going to be happy with his proposal. Alphabet's Google has launched a new film and TV production initiative called 100 Zeros to focus on identifying projects that the tech giant can help fund or produce. The initiative is a multi-year partnership with Range Media Partners, a talent film and production company. Shoemaking giant Skechers agreed to be taken private by 3G Capital for $9.42 billion in what could be the US footwear industry's biggest buyout to date. It comes at a time when the company grapples with the impact of steep US tariffs. Investment firm 3G Capital offered $63 per Skechers share in cash, representing a 28% premium to the stock's Friday close. Following trials, Uber is now allowing passengers across most of the UK to pay in cash. The cash payment option was this week extended to all UK cities except London, where it's being reviewed. Individual drivers can still opt out of accepting notes and coins, partly if they are worried about safety of carrying them in their vehicles. Citigroup CEO John Fraser said most clients could absorb US tariffs of 10%, but cautioned that companies are waiting on investments and hiring until there is more economic clarity. She added that 25% may be much more challenging to absorb. In a deal that could create the largest independent fuel distributor in the Americas, Sunoco will buy Canada-based Parkland for about $9.1 billion, including debt. Parkland management say the deal is a path to greater financial stability and growth. Data and analytics firm Palantir Technologies raised its annual sales forecast, betting on strong demand for its products that help businesses adopt generative artificial intelligence technology. It now expects revenue in fiscal year 2025 between $3.89 billion and $3.90 billion, up from its earlier forecast of sales between $3.74 billion and $3.76 billion. Ford Motors not so lucky, though beating Wall Street's first quarter expectations, are suspending their 2025 financial guidance amid an expected $2.5 billion impact this year from US tariffs. They also expect to offset about $1 billion of those costs through remediation actions as well as volume and pricing interventions. Egypt's net foreign assets spiked up by $4.9 billion in March, apparently boosted by the approval of the fourth review of the country's IMF program. Net foreign assets climbed to the equivalent of $15.08 billion after the IMF in early March approved the disbursement to Egypt of $1.2 billion after completing its review of the country's $8 billion economic reform program. The IMF also approved a request for a $1.3 billion arrangement under its Resilience and Sustainability Facility. Still on the IMF, a team of officials will visit Angola this week as the country edges closer to a new loan deal with the lender due to pressure following the slide in crude oil prices. And in South Africa, state utility Eskom said yesterday that it was optimistic about the power outlook over the southern hemisphere winter and was aiming for no electricity cuts in the next 4 months if breakdowns stay around current levels. Eskom's difficulties supplying power to South Africa have hurt economic growth for more than a decade, but a recent turnaround in its plant performance is evident in significant reduction in cuts, including possibly throughout this winter. And in Nigeria, the federal government has pledged its commitment towards the actualization of the $3 billion Agge Deep Seaport project to promote job creation, economic development, and attract local and foreign investment to the Niger Delta region. The Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Adegboyega Oyetola, stated this at the weekend during the flag-off of the Marine Safety Sensitization Program and distribution of life jackets to waterways users in Yenagoa, Bayelsa State. We already know that Jerome Powell and many of the other 18 officials that sit on the Fed's rate-setting FOMC, that's the committee that sets rates, have said they want to see how Trump's tariffs affect the economy before making any moves. And so far, negotiations and deals are still at early stages, and to guess how the combination of trade deals, tax cuts, and the deregulation push will impact macroeconomic stability is a lot to ask. Markets do not like uncertainty, and central banks find them paralyzing as they magnify chances of policy missteps. Indeed, Trump and Besant may be convinced a combination of record low energy prices, weakened economy, and downsizing governance in Washington will drag inflation down. But will that be enough to offset the inflationary impact of tariffs? Despite the good news that, apart from China, also now backing off, retaliation has really been limited. The fog, however, has in no way cleared for the Apex Bank Committee. A strong jobs report may lead to some reassurance that a recession is not in sight. Still, the odds of a rate cut are only at 3%. That's almost nil. Indeed, the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, they have a lot to chew on with all the fresh data that has just come out on the economy and a trend of declining or at least stabilizing inflation. Conflict between the executive and the Federal Reserve is not new and can be managed. And indeed, Powell has juggled the conflict commendably. And Trump, of course, is smart not to risk the market uproar that will come from attempting to replace Jerome Powell before the end of his tenure. Also, the issue of independence will not go away and should not be lost on the executive, especially as a replacement, as dovish as they can find, takes over from Jerome Powell when his tenure as the board chair ends next year, May. But Powell remains a member of the Board of Governors until 2028, and he will continue to be a strong influence on monetary policy decisions. The two-day meeting will not present an updated summary of economic projections. We have to wait for the June 17-18th meeting for that. Also, it is not a meeting expected to move markets in a material way. As little we do not know already is expected to be said. At least that is what is expected. And in Nigeria, the Debt Management Office, on behalf of the federal government, announced the offer for subscription of the May 2025 issuance of the FGN Savings Bond. The offer opened yesterday and will close on Friday, May 9, 2025. Interest rates for this month's savings bond series are 16.173% per annum for the 2-year bond due May 14, 2027, and 17.173% per annum for the 3-year bond due May 14, 2028. DoorDash is buying British meal delivery firm Deliveroo for £2.9 billion, that's $3.85 billion, as part of the US online delivery platform's plans to expand into international markets. In South Africa, business conditions stabilized after 4 months decline as PMI comes in at 50.0 in April. Also in Kenya, PMI at 52.0 rises to a 27-month high. In Europe, the latest data saw Germany's service sector slip back into contraction after having grown in each of the previous 4 months. The headline, Hamburg Commercial Bank Germany's services PMI recorded a reading of 49 in April, falling from 50.9 in March. Friedrich Merz today failed to be elected Chancellor, that's in Germany, in a shock first-round parliamentary vote that just came in. April Eurozone Composite Index fell to 50.4 from 50.9, also a 2-month low. UK Services PMI slipped into contraction also in April, ending a 17-month period of expansion at 49.0, down from 52.5 in March. Asia-Pacific markets mostly higher as investors continue to assess trade developments between the US and countries in the region. Also, China's Caixin Services Purchasing Managers Index declined to 50.7 in April from 51.9 in March. The data missed the market forecast of 51.7 by a wide margin. S&P futures down early today as investors awaited the start of the Federal Reserve's first policy meeting since President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs in early April. Crude oil prices are stabilizing today after yesterday's plunge. Brent crude is up, advancing from the $60.25 price posted on Monday, but in early trading still under $61 a barrel. Well, that's all on this edition of Global Business Insights. Thanks for watching. This is Bode Shosami. Bye-bye.